Welcome to this edition of Print Speak. My name's Rebecca Travis. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the curator and collections manager here at Open Studio. We're really excited to be joined today by Cleopatria Peterson, who will be speaking about their current feature wall installation, Bestie Mart. But before we begin, I'd just like to do a land acknowledgement. Open Studio acknowledges that it is situated on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. They are the original owners and custodians of the land of which we continue to create and exist. If you don't know us here at Open Studio, then we are an artist-run center dedicated to contemporary print. We offer accessible, inclusive, and affordable printmaking facilities, programs, and services for artists and the public across Canada and abroad. We support artists in creating and exhibiting contemporary print in an open-minded, safe, and collaborative environment. And our vision is to shape the exploration of print as essential, dynamic, and relevant to contemporary culture and creative thought. Print Speak is a virtual education series which focuses on incredible artists whose work pushes the boundaries of print media. These talks will take you on a journey with each artist to learn about their passion for creating. Just a couple of Zoom protocols. We'll keep everyone on mute for the time that Cleopatria is talking, and then there'll be a 15-minute Q&A at the end where we'll open it up to questions. You can either put your questions in the chat or you can use the raised hand emoji and we will get to your questions at that point. And now I'm just going to introduce Cleo. So Cleopatria Peterson is an award-winning multidisciplinary artist and printmaker who illustrates, writes, and loves self-publishing. Their work focuses on themes of nature, humor, identity, and above all things, love. This might be the nicest artist introduction I've ever read. They graduated from Toronto Metropolitan University's Fashion Communication program under the 2020 medal winner for the Cross-Disciplinary Arts publications at OCAD. They're also the inaugural recipient of Open Studio's Black, Indigenous Peoples of Colour Artist Residency program. And they are a huge advocate for encouraging people from all backgrounds to make art. In this Print Speak session, Cleopatria will discuss their process for creating work as part of their current installation, Bestie Mart, which you can see behind me, including using printmaking to create objects and the practice of staying silly within their work. Cleopatria's exhibition is showing on the Open Studio feature wall until the end of day tomorrow, April 15th, 2023. So do come and see it if you haven't yet. And Cleopatria, pass across to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this very warm summer-like Friday. I'm going to share my screen. So just a second. I put together a quick PowerPoint to help me keep my thoughts together as I talk. If you've ever participated in like a zine, if I've ever taught zines to you or anything, if you took a class with me, you will know that I will put a bear in my PowerPoint presentation, which I think kind of is going to speak to kind of the humor I'm going to talk about in my art as well. Laura, if you just want to give me a thumbs up if it's okay for the pin and the screen that you said you were going to set up.
You're good to go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as Rebecca introduced me, I'm Cleopatria Peterson, and I'm going to talk about myself, my practice, my feature wall at Open Studio, my journey, my art journey, which is still going on, and staying silly. Who am I? My pronouns are they, them. I am a Libra, and I think that's very important to my identity. I'm a medal winner for the publication programs at OCAD. I'm the last medal winner that will ever be for the publications program because they've now merged with print. So now it's pub and print at OCAD, which is probably the only, that's not fair. It's one of like the coolest programs still left at OCAD in my personal opinion. I am the Black Indigenous person of color in residence at Open Studio. I got to stay a little longer, which I'm so grateful for. And in terms of my practice, I do a lot. I kind of have to keep busy at all times. And I'll speak to that a bit later as well, like how having multiple practices kind of helps me in my day-to-day life. But I'm a printmaker, an illustrator, a comic artist, an author and publisher. I tell stories, and I love to teach like theme making and skill sharing. And at the end of the day, I'm just a human being. So let's get on to my printmaker journey. So I discovered printmaking pretty late in life. So I've always been kind of like someone who teaches myself how to make work. Like I taught myself how to draw. And I have like, as I can't like not give credit to the institutions that I've had the privilege of being a part of. Privilege can be dependent. Like I did go to an art public school when I was in Kingston, Ontario, and all of these other things, but there was always something I was navigating against, either being like the only like Black kid in my school or not, and like not getting like kind of the support or not being able to ask for it because I didn't know how. So yeah, I would just kind of like in like high school and like younger, I was always just kind of like drawing in my sketchbook, and I wanted to be like, I was like obsessed with anime when I was younger. So I was always like, I wanted to be on the same level as like what inspired me, like Clamp and like Gundam Wing and all the stuff that I grew up watching. And then something, well, like I think when I was drawing, I was always drawing like really cool outfits, because I really liked like designing intricate, cool outfits, kind of like a la like Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So I got it in my head that I loved fashion and that I was good at fashion. So I was like, I need to go to Ryerson, now known as TMU University, which I still like calling it X University due to the trauma I amassed from that program. Yeah, I wanted to like kind of be a fashion illustrator and stuff like that. I was really obsessed with like this idea of creating clothes without really understanding what went into creating clothes, such as like the sewing process, which I'm not good at all, which really sucks to learn that you're not good at sewing and that it's a really hard, complicated process when you are in university and you have to do that even though it's not part of your major. I don't know. The program was so unnecessarily hard and complicated for no reason whatsoever. They really pushed that like only 100 people get into this program. So I felt really special that I was there, and miserable. It's like, I can't be miserable. I'm one of only 100 people. So like, I like have to be better, but like, I didn't like what I was doing. And kind of in that time it got, and I didn't know it when you're really young, like straight out of high school, even though I had taken an extra year to kind of do a co-op and everything, like you don't know what you're doing with your life, and you kind of don't, it's really hard to have those answers, and it's a really hard and expensive situation to be putting young people into, and telling them that it's something that's mandatory. And when you don't have those resources, it's really scary as well. So I just stayed for 4 years, and I got that degree. And in that time it was like, well, I'm not enjoying anything that I'm doing in my program. So I just started doing stuff on my own that I did like, which then eventually led to like comics and zines and telling stories that way, because I've always really loved narratives and stories, and I like drawing. So it just like made sense to me. So that's where my work started to go instead, like into a kind of publication based area. And then when I graduated from TMU, I was kind of like in this like limbo phase of like, what do I do? Because like I didn't want a job in fashion. Fashion, as I learned from that university experience, is extremely toxic, ableist, like racist, sexist, like all of these horrible things. And at that university, those were being held up as standards that we had to keep. And like, it's not true. So it was like a very like kind of miserable thing to be left with. So I just kind of jumped into doing comic work and cartooning a bit more. So there was just a lot of illustration and like working on stuff like that. And I actually took one of the continuing education courses at OCAD that was taught by Fiona Smythe. That was like sequential art, which was the comic class. And then I reconnected with a friend who was at OCAD and also had friends who were in the publications program. Because I'd also always been interested in like book work and stuff. So books and comics kind of go hand in hand. And publications at OCAD was like a small program, but it just sounded like really perfect for like what I was interested in. So then I went to OCAD, I went to university again to the publication program at OCAD, which was, it was honestly really great. Like when you go to university twice, you always amass debt unless you have the resources to pay for that. But doing university the second time around was really good because I knew what I wanted out of it. And I think that's the problem with university, especially the first go around, is like you don't know anything. You don't know what to expect. You're not prepared for it. And that can be really scary. But for my second run, I was like, I know what I want to get out of this. And I knew how to operate it a lot better. And also I wasn't being forced to take 6 classes every term. So it went a lot better. And I was able to make work that I wanted to make, opposed to making work that I thought my profs wanted to get a mediocre grade, because I was just trying to please them with something I didn't even like. So it was just different. And of course, everyone goes to OCAD to have grad X, because that is like the biggest part of OCAD. So unfortunately, as I was working on my final thesis, that it ended with the start of COVID. So we didn't have grad X, we didn't have anything. And I was just kind of left with like a loss of space. And this is leading into the printmaking process too, which I didn't talk about, but loss of space, loss of community, loss of like money, ideas of making art or whatever. So at OCAD, I learned how to letterpress, book mind in a more complex way than just like a zine, and also screen print, which I don't think I was very good at any of those in my classes, but like it was great to have that space and learning opportunity there, because access to space is something that is so limited in the city, and that the city actively like cannibalizes. Basically, it's so hard to support the arts in the city. Like you're always seeing the spaces that support the people who are your community be taken away because they can't afford to stay, which is like heartbreaking, and also scary. It's really scary. And I think I really felt that with the start of the pandemic, because not only did I not get to finish my thesis, I lost access to like the Vandercook, and there's like nowhere else you can use a Vandercook really. It's not a machine that is just commonly everywhere. Like it's a lot easier to screen print in other studio spaces, or you can make a setup in your home. I've known people who've done that. But yeah, access to space is something that I'm always very aware of and scared of losing. So then when I saw the call for this residency, I was like, I want it. I want it so bad. And like, when I want something, I get very normal about it. And by being normal, I mean, I get insane. And I was just like, I need this so bad. So I just like, I don't know, I just put all my energy into my application and just like, fingers crossed, prayed that I would get it. And I'm so, so grateful and happy that I did. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at now. Let's see. I'll talk about my thesis and then kind of how that led to Bestie Mart, and it still kind of talks about the landscape of like my journey kind of. So in my thesis, this kind of goes back to like academic institutions, and where like if you're the only Black person, if you're the only trans person, you're the only person in the environment that you're working out of, and you're in a place where you're trying to create work and you're trying to share that with people who maybe don't have that experience, but they also kind of maybe lack the knowledge or empathy, et cetera, it can be very, very, very exhausting. So I found with my thesis, I was really inspired by like Adrian Piper and Claudia Rankine, and I was just working around like, how can I explain the violence, the micro violence that I'm facing in these institutions through the work that I'm creating. And I kind of went through like, it settled on emotional labor and the compensation that I wanted from emotional labor that I was experiencing. I made these tokens, which I'm showing. So the image shows about 15 tokens that I designed. How I made these is I was able to print a plate at OCAD that had the designs on them, and I just ran them through the Vandercook on a metallic paper, so they're actually letterpressed. And then I cut them out with I think it have it right here, just one of these guys, the die cutter. All of the little tokens cut out with that. And then I got laser cut acrylic, and then I glued on the sides to it so it'd be like a thick and feel like an actual coin. And I was referencing kind of like Adrian Piper's My Calling card, which was like a card that she printed and would hand out to people, and it would kind of say something along the lines of like, hi, I'm sure you did not notice when you said this racist thing, but I am actually like a woman of color, blah, blah, blah. And like, so the idea of these tokens were to like have these kind of phrases, and like you could give the token ideally to someone who micro or macro aggressed you. That was kind of the goal I was operating on. And like this idea of monetary value and like taking invoices and the ledger and all of these things and working on monetary value and like a bank idea. That's what I was, because I was just like, how can we create ways to accrue reparations that has value in a way. And then COVID happened and I never finished my thesis. And then I no longer had access to studio or printmaking. I didn't think I was going to make art again. I was just like, it was just such a, like everyone experienced some like something very traumatic with the start of the pandemic and how things all closed down. I was just like, well, that's it. Like I wasn't getting a show. I wasn't getting, it was just like a very jarring end to everything. I didn't really know where to pivot from there. So there was definitely like a long period of like depression. I don't want to make art anymore, blah, blah, blah. And then even thinking about the work I was creating in my thesis, because there was this really weird period when like we found out that GradX was canceled. We found out sitting at a zine fair actually, and the way OCAD handled it was really messy and really bad because if you were faculty and I was at someone's RA, like a research assistant, you got an email first before the students did. So as a student and an RA, I found out before everyone else, and it was just like this slow, weird, like whisper of people figuring out that our grad show was canceled. And just like, I don't know where I was getting with that. I guess just any chance I can get to drag OCAD for the response to that. But yeah, so I was left with like this idea, because everyone I knew was like, oh, like their works was closed down. There was no way for them to make money. I don't think CERB had started yet. So there were like GoFundMes and everything. And this idea of creating print work of monetary value when money was so actually valuable to our lives and what we needed to survive this experience. And there was it was just like a very scary time. It was like, actually screw banks and stuff. Like I divested myself from that kind of thought process because like it didn't matter. Like having a fake token didn't actually value the like very scary and very real things that people were experiencing. So I knew that even if I was going to continue that work, that it would no longer be about a bank of labor, of emotional labor. Like I didn't want anything to do with a bank institution, because it was also an institution that was extremely harmful. In this slide, I am featuring masks that I letterpress. These are a bit more recent. It says it is recommended to care about disabled people, but it is not mandatory. And this was just kind of, I was at the airport, and there's just those signs are everywhere, and then no one was really wearing. It was like, it is recommended to wear a mask, is everywhere. It's recommended to wear a mask on the TTC. It's recommended. And it's like, okay, why is it recommended and why is it not like mandatory? Why has it become a choice? And who are we leaving behind with that choice, and who is being harmed with that choice? This is a more recent work, but I feel very strongly about the response to the COVID pandemic that is ongoing, which it shows up in the work in Bestie Mart as well. But yeah, this follows a trajectory of where my art goes in terms of like what it's becoming more so the pivot from what happened with the bank, and thus Bestie Mart was born. So I was no longer thinking about materials and money. I was thinking more in terms of objects, and how things could be easier. And of course, I can't achieve that with a print object. At the end of the day, it's still a print object. But I really have fun playing with this idea that if I can create an object that speaks to things about accessibility and the lack of ease that people like me and people I care about, or people from communities who are underrepresented, like that work is really important to me and it's really fulfilling. And that's kind of, and like even like with Bestie Mart, like it still has like serious implications. Like currently grocery stores is so expensive to get food, and the people who own grocery stores are pocketing so much money, and there's all this like stuff about how like, oh no, people are stealing food from groceries. Well, yeah, oh no, people can't afford food to live and their needs aren't being met. And if our basic needs aren't being met, how can we pretend that we're a part of a society that is successful if we're leaving so many people behind? Here are some close-up images of work from Bestie Mart. So the first one is a little pedestal that says, "Do you want some cheese with your wine?" And featuring the box of white tear flavored saltines that I designed, and the two gender juice boxes, boy juice and girl juice. I made actual saltines, and I cut out little pieces of paper cheese to go on it. And I letterpressed a paper plate that says, "I love you and I want you to eat well." It's then followed by close-ups of receipts. So there are receipts letterpressed on actual receipt paper, kind of like to create the physicality of the space. So they're like Bestie Mart receipts for like the actual products that I'm selling. And then there's two receipts that kind of deviate away from that, but I figured they tie in just as well, which are the numbers that will break your heart, which kind of summarize, and it's interesting. All my receipts are dated from when they were actually, the type was set. So like for the gender juice one in the slide, it's like, it was December 13th of 2022 where it was printed. And the little micro number underneath it actually says 401 Richmond. With the numbers as well. So I did put a lot of tiny details in them, but the numbers that will break your heart, I kind of split it up into Toronto, Ontario, and Ontario, because there were lots of conversations about, actually, no, I had set the type for this before they announced that they wanted to give like over $1 million to the police budget. And then also when I finished printing these, John Tory resigned as mayor. So it's a living record of kind of his mayoral failure. So it says his failure, it lists like the average cost of living in Toronto, the salary of like the police department, how many homeless people, how many unhoused people are currently in Toronto. And these numbers, if I were to look at them now and reset the type for this, they would be higher, which is very devastating. There also wouldn't be a mayor, I guess, at the moment, but like the numbers would change. And then for Ontario, I really wanted to bring light to MAID, which is, oh God, I blacked out. But MAID is basically being offered to people as assisted suicide, and it's being offered to people instead of trying to give them accessible housing or affordable living and everything. So the fact that it's so unregulated that people are being offered death opposed to being offered resources and support to actually survive, it's kind of messed up. And I also totals when I was setting the type, like the current amount of people who had died from COVID in Ontario, and I think the number was 50,000. And it's probably more than that. It's definitely more than that now. So that's what I was trying to achieve with the receipts. So print as object and print as product. I find it really interesting to create print objects that are 3D and aren't just flat. And it's really fun for me to do that. So and you have to make a lot of mock-ups when you're doing that. And as you can kind of see, like the corners on the juice box are still kind of raised, and finding the right glue is still a journey that I'm going on. But here's like a sample of like an early juice box. It's on a different paper, which actually worked a little bit better. So that's other things like testing out the paper and practicing folding. The paper that I use for the final is like a cardboard, so it really represents a product a lot better than like this kind of paper. And this is how it starts off, completely flat. So to make this, I took a juice box and I cut it open, and then I traced all the fold marks and I scanned it in, and then I created that in Illustrator, and then I filled everything inside of it. So I knew when I printed it, I'd be able to fold it exactly the same way. Here's an example of an unfolded saltine box that has the scored lines. So you can see how it kind of folds in on itself. And I really like product design because it's out of spite. Like I said earlier, I really like teaching myself things. And sometimes I have to teach myself things because no one else is going to, or you're going to go to a university that says that they offer product design and then they never offer it in your 4 years of being there. So that leads to you teaching yourself how to create a product. Being silly. I have to be funny or I will die. The world we live in is a very hard world to live in. It's simply not easy. I'm not from a community or any communities that I have some privilege in like being like light-skinned and those kind of things, but like I'm still Black, I'm still non-binary, trans, I'm still queer. So there are so many things in this world that are designed to not let people like me succeed, and I'm always working against those. But if I were to it's very hard. But if I were to just focus on how hard it is, I would not be able to survive it. So I have to make funny things, or it's my way of coping, actually. Really, it really is just a way of coping. But I also do find that using humor in my work can make the hard stuff a little more accessible for people to engage with it, because they don't. I feel like it lends my work to have two different layers to it, where you can like see it and you can laugh about it, but then when you actually maybe start to think about it a bit longer, you're like, oh God. So that's kind of like, yes, it's funny to have girl juice and boy juice as a juice box form, but like actually it would be really beautiful and great if you could just go to the grocery store and get things that were accessible to you, instead of having to jump through all these hoops to get HRT, or that when you want reparations for very harmful colonial violence, that it tastes good and is a good meal, and that you have a card that lets you travel spaces where you will not be harmed. Like, I just kind of like to imagine the future that way, where these things are easy to have, and that we can laugh while we're trying to get there. So what's next for me? I will be at TCAF, which is the end of the month. It is April 30th, I believe. And then I'll be at ManCaf. And I'm really excited that in 2024 of next year, I want to say April or May. I'm going to say April. Sorry that I don't have the exact date. I'm going to be expanding the work of Bestie Mart to make it even bigger and better. And it'll be at Tangled Gallery, which is also in 401 Richmond, where Open Studio is. I hope to have a little rest, but until then, I will continue to make silly prints and be silly. So thank you for joining me for my little talk. I think I covered everything, but feel free to ask me questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Cleopatria. So yeah, if you'd like to share any questions, then you can write them in the chat or you can raise your hand. Do you want to take yourself off mute and you can ask your question? I think we're just having a little bit of trouble hearing you. You could also write it into the chat. Oh, just an applause. Oh, thank you. So maybe Cleopatria, I'll just ask you, thank you for being so open about your experience and your journey to getting to where you are today. And this time of year is that time where artists are graduating from school, and it's that sort of strange step of finishing something and thinking about what might come next. Did you have any, I guess, kind of advice for artists who are at that stage, kind of based on your experience, anything that you found really sort of helpful that you'd want to pass along?
Sure. I guess just like you got to make art that you want to make. I find a lot of people, and I understand like you do have to like make money from your work as well, but I find a lot of people we're like in this kind of economy where you have to be grinding at all times. You have to be so present on social media and stuff. And like I do put myself out there, but like it's definitely on my own terms. And I feel like people get what they get when they get from me. And I don't know if that is good advice or if that's ever like caused me to lose opportunities. I don't know, because I've never seen them be lost, I guess. But it's just like this like constant pressure to be like on and available for people who don't really know you. I really advise against that. I think that like really is harmful to yourself as a person. At the end of the day, you have to make work that you want to make. And like as long as you're putting it out there on your terms and you're happy with that, like the opportunities will come. So I think as long as you do focus on yourself and sharing that and just being honest, like that will lead to your success, like, and just building connections with people. Like so many people that I've met have been through like events like at TCAF or zine fairs, so putting yourself out there as well. But it doesn't have to be to your own detriment. Like definitely be aware of your boundaries and set those boundaries, and also be aware of like how your body feels too. Like now I know kind of that I need to take breaks more, whereas before I would be like so on and so like doing so much at once, but now my body is like, actually, no, you will be bedridden for 2 days because you did all of this labor or you were this social. So making sure that you take care of yourself for that too, like just being very like, just gentle to yourself. Hopefully that helps.
That was great. Really great advice.
Also, oh, thank you. Also, just apply to everything. If you want something, apply for it. Because like, yes, you may get a no, but like you might also get a yes. And I just like how I approach it is I try not to overthink it. I just black out. I do the application. I kind of now have like everything kind of set aside in a folder. Like my CV is there, my reference images are all there. Like if you set that up, it helps you out so much, and you can just like apply to things, forget about it. You may get a no, which will suck a little bit, but you also might get a yes, which will be really great. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's also, I think, amazing to pass along. And you never know where an opportunity may lead, or just putting your work out there in different ways, who may see it or when it may come back to you in a different way. I think that's super great advice, and not to be discouraged if it is a no. Yeah, that's great. So I have a question from Ellen. They ask, what are some printmaking practices, mediums, concepts you haven't done much of that you'd like to learn and do more of going forward?
Yeah, so I'm actually taking an etching class at Open Studio with Danny Cardosa, who's amazing. So yeah, I want to get better at etching. I just dipped my first plate in the acid bath Tuesday, and the outcome was really, really, really cool. Like my illustrations lend itself really cool to this process. But I hate the 60 steps you have to do to get to etching, because like screen printing and letterpress are just like, you're so efficient with it, you know what you have to do, and then you can just print. This is like 60 hours of scrubbing a plate with sand and then it's just like a nightmare. Like getting your plate prepped is a nightmare, but when it has the stuff on it and you can do the drawing on it, it's so much fun. So I love that part. I hate everything else about it. And I haven't printed it yet, but I'm excited to explore that and learn more. And I'd also really, really want to learn stone litho. So one day I'd like to learn that. Those are like the more complicated printmaking practices. I feel like I have it pretty good and pretty easy just doing like letterpress and screen print.
Yeah, when you were mentioning about sewing and how difficult the processes were, and that you then moved into printmaking, I was like, there's an element of that that's sort of ironic as well, because of those really intensive technical processes. But it's great that you're building on what you've been doing already, what you found a love for, and now it's pushing you to like find something else in the same medium. I have a question from Wan Yu, who says, how do you balance your free artistic and creative motivation for fun and silly creations and the pace of curriculum of art schools and universities, which pushes the production of work?
I think when I was at like in those institutions, I would trick the system and I would do what I wanted to do anyways, which worked out in my favor most times. Because like at the end of the day, like you don't want to fail your class, but also you're literally just making work for your portfolio. So if you want the work in that portfolio to speak to what you're doing, you should just make it be what you want to do to begin with. For like my free artistic and creative motivation, I think what I've learned about myself is, as someone who is a multidisciplinary artist and does kind of do a circle of different practices, because I do writing and I do drawing. Sometimes those are together, sometimes they're not. Is like I kind of work on like this cycle of like changing up the practices that I'm working with, and it makes my brain work differently. Because the brain I'm using when I'm writing is not the same brain I'm using when I'm drawing, and so forth. And So being able to have those different breaks that make me problem solve differently has been really helpful. And also kind of having like just a hobby a little bit. Like I do some weaving kind of just to like keep my hands busy and my brain off. And I found that to be really helpful as like something that resets me. So yeah, I think as I've grown older, I've become more aware of the things, how they work cyclically within me. And this might just be like me and how I work as a person and how my neurodivergent brain works. And sometimes my work isn't silly. I think sometimes it's sad. And I think the silly stuff that I achieve with printmaking through like graphic design and stuff isn't necessarily how my work comes across when I'm doing a comic or illustrating something. I don't know. So like this is an example of one of the pages for, oops, upside down, for the comic I'm currently screen printing. You can see like the detail in it. But like it's completely a different tonal shift from what Bestie Mart looks like. Like my illustration style is completely black and white. It's very heavy in nature, and it's weird. So I think for me, it's good that I have these outlets that let me show different aspects of myself in different ways. I don't know if that answers your question. I hope it helps though.
It's a really good answer. I think having that kind of variety of different practices as well, like you said, to use different parts of your brain, and you can apply different kind of ways that you want to work within the way that works for those mediums, I think also is kind of comes across with, like you said, looking at the difference between your illustration work and your graphic and zine work, and then looking at Bestie Mart, which is almost like kind of pop colors and the humor elements. I just have one more question about Bestie Mart. And I guess generally like prints and products. So I wondered, like, when you're coming up with an idea for something, are you kind of constantly noting things that like, oh, I could think about this particular message and this would be the perfect like object or vehicle for it? Or like, what is your process in terms of deciding like, oh, this is a juice box idea, or this is going to be like saltines? I'm kind of curious how you get to that point.
That's a good question. I think the internet for sure. Like a lot of the stuff that I create, like the original juice box idea was like someone's like graphic design for a juice box. And shout out to you, uncredited graphic designer on the internet, and your meme for that. So it's kind of like thinking, like seeing those funny kind of memes and like taking that and kind of expanding it a bit further. There was one project I had at OCAD where I made like a T for T mailer, which had like a bunch of like trans coupons in it. And one of them was like a coupon to get like free top surgery at Claire's, which was also a meme I saw on the internet. So like just taking those kinds of things. I would say that I'm collaborating with the internet. But yeah, I guess like I do just kind of ruminate on, I think now as I'm approaching making Bestie Mart a bit larger, I'm kind of thinking about these certain issues and what is the best way to represent them, and what object is the best way to do that. Like I do want to create an object that speaks to like affordable housing or accessible housing. And I don't know quite how to do that yet. So it is something that just kind of, I just ruminate on until I find the right thing. And then in one of the posters for in the Bestie Mart exhibition, I did put like a bunch of kind of like fake concepts, and like I do want to try to see how I can actualize those. I really do want to make the security blanket, and I want it to be like collaborative, and I want it to be like this giant quilt made out of like prints made by other people in their hands. and that kind of speaks to what their ideas of what security could be. So I guess that's kind of how I'm brainstorming. And I think now I do want, because I do like skill sharing, and I do like letting people know that like things like lino cut printing can be accessible, and you can do them at home, and like everyone can kind of learn how to print make in their own way, in an accessible way, if they don't have access to the space. I do want them, I want to be able to share those skills with people. So I think going forward, that's also something I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about how can I create something in a way that can also let people know that they can kind of do this too. That's kind of where my head's at about thinking going forward. But for the other stuff, yeah, I definitely owe it to the internet for making me laugh at graphics.
I love that the internet is your collaborator in some way on this. And also just can't wait to see what an expanded version of Bestie Mart might look like kind of this time next year. Just want to say thank you, especially to Cleopatria, for doing a beautiful talk presentation for us, for being so open, and just for your continued work and presence in the studio. It's been really great having you as a residency artist, and I look forward to kind of continuing to work with you, hopefully in the coming years. And thank you everyone for joining us for Print Speak on this beautiful Friday, taking some time from outside to kind of sit with us. You'll find that the current exhibitions, including Bestie Mart, are just on until end of day tomorrow. So really encourage you to come and see them in person. We're open from 12 until 5 tomorrow until 5 p.m. this evening as well. We also have a group exhibition in the main gallery, Cultivating Connection, and a solo exhibition by Phyllis Gordon in our project space, also open until tomorrow at 5. And then actually on April 21st, we have our next exhibition openings from 5 till 7 p.m. So if you haven't been here before and you're interested in coming, just getting a sense of who we are, the exhibition opening is a really nice way of coming and seeing what our space is about. We will be opening exhibitions by Alex Linfield, Phoebe Todd-Parish, and Chris Hutzel. And actually our next Print Speak talk will be with Alex Linfield, who is showing in our main gallery space. So the sign-up link for that is actually already live. It'll be on April 27th at 1 p.m. And his talk is entitled Source Code of the Digital. If you missed the previous Print Speak talks, you can find them all on our YouTube channel and on our website. We'll work on this one for the next couple of weeks, and then that will also be added to the kind of catalog of them online. And then a final thing is that we're also working towards our current fundraising auction, Future Proof. It's a fully online auction. It launches on May 4th and runs till May 14th. And it's a great place to see and purchase some of the amazing work that's being made through the studio and that artists have kindly donated to us from all across Canada. All the proceeds go into supporting the studio and the programs that we run. So please do check that out as well. As always, Print Speak sessions are free, but if you enjoyed it and you're feeling like you'd like to make a donation, then please do. There's lots of links in the chat for that. And just if you're totally new to the space, if you're here for the first time kind of learning about Open Studio, please pop in and see us. We're in Suite 104 at 401 Richmond, and we have our gallery spaces. They're always open to the public, our shop space as well. And then if you're interested in the studio, you can always pop in and we'll happily take you back there to take a look at the space as well. So if you're new to us, please come and say hello in person as well. And otherwise, just thank you again to Cleopatria and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully see you for the next Print Speak. Okay, thanks.
Bye.